Greetings, Monster Kids one and all. Welcome to the playground. It is I, Danvers, aka John Faust. Welcome to the Monster Kid Playground. So we are here again with sneaky Raoul Madblood. You know what? We tried this before, and like all things, when you're starting out, you're gonna crash and burn. And that's exactly what version 1 of this was. It was an echo and, all these things. But hey, we're here again. How are you?
I'm doing great. We got a cyclone knocking on our door. It's definitely going to make landfall. So I'm just having fun while I can.
Yeah. So for those of us in the northern hemisphere, explain to us what a cyclone is.
Well, from what I understand, it's basically a hurricane under a different name.
Oh, okay. So it's not like a tornado. It's something. It's a hurricane.
Yeah. You know what?
Let's Google it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is it? It's coming off the water. It's not coming off of land.
Yes, sir. Yes. Sir.
Okay. Yikes. So it's spinning. So a hurricane spins in one direction, whatever that is. And then a cyclone probably spins in the other direction, is what I have always understood how these things work, but I could be dead wrong.
A storm or system of winds that rotates about a center of low atmospheric pressure and often brings a great deal of rain. Yeah, it's a big deal, and they're expecting lots of damage. And
yeah.
And plus, we're on an island off the coast of Brisbane, so that's going to be interesting as well.
That helps a lot. Well, I hope that you stay safe and keep us posted as things progress. It's supposed to hit tonight, tomorrow.
Well,
this is what editing is for. So shit.
Well, that must have been the first stage of the net or something.
Okay, well, fun, so fun. So,
do you ever get the feeling we're cursed? But just cut that bit out. It'll still be video. It'll just be blank.
Yeah, it'll be totally fine.
Okay, this is cursed.
Let me make sure my mic is correct. Okay, great. All right, all right, we're back. Okay, we're back.
You were saying stay safe, and I will say thank you for that.
Yes, you are most welcome. As the internet goes. Oh, technology. Well, yes. So cyclones and everything. I admire your gumption to move forward with this. So, oh my God. Let's just jump right into it. We'll try and keep this in an hour. So that if things go haywire, it's not crazy, but yeah. So let's talk a little bit. You have your own podcast and live stream, which I've kind of jumped in and out of when I see that it's when it's live. Tell us a little bit about that, and then I'll have some things to say.
Well, there's several. there's several. There was a series I did called Monster Kid Origins, which I'm migrating to its own channel now. So there's a channel called Monster Kid Origins where all those interviews will be.
Okay.
I'm doing a thing called Johnny D's Rock and Roll PhD with Johnny D, who is a horror host. He does graveyard cinema, but we're going through the Monkees now. We've done John Lennon and other stuff.
Nice.
Interviewed the lady that did the Yoko Ono book.
Oh, so, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. And my dearest friend all through my life from elementary school to now, Johnny Vintage, we're doing a thing called GORF, which was an old school video game, but it stands for Going Over Retro Films.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome.
And those are watch-alongs.
Okay.
So there's a lot going on.
Okay. Tell us how people can watch those. Give us the links.
Oh my goodness! Everything's at the Madbloods YouTube channel. MADBLUDS, not BLOOD, because somebody has tried to co-opt the name.
Oh, fun.
And I've been doing this for a long time, and this guy's been around for like a couple of years.
Yeah.
And it's a direct ripoff, but nothing you can do about it. That's YouTube.
I mean, it really is. But you know what? You can't beat the original. So
Thank you. And I'm doing it because of the horror host I grew up with,
yeah,
Dr. Madblood, which was with 2 O's.
right. Awesome. And you grew up in the United
Virginia.
States.
Yes.
Okay. And for those of you who don't know, we've already done this podcast, so I'm retreading old ground now. I'm like, John, nobody knows what you're talking about. We've got to like give some context clues here. So you live now in Australia. That's why you're having a cyclone
Yes.
come your way. Everybody's like, what in the hell are you guys talking about? And you grew up in the United States, so your Dr. Madblood was your horror host growing up. So,
yes, sir.
Okay, awesome. Now that we've gotten all that out of the way, so one evening, I had the gumption. I don't know. I'm turning into an old man, coming up with this stuff. I decided, I'll join this live stream in the chat and, kind of be part of it because you guys were talking about Night of the Living Dead. Oh, I should not have done that. But
yeah, I remember. I know what you're talking about. Yep.
So I agree. So for those of you who are unaware of this, Night of the Living Dead is public domain because it was originally called Night of the Flesh Eaters, and their distributor forgot to put the copyright mark on it. And when it came out in 1968, the law was that if you don't put a copyright notice on it, it just falls into the public domain. The laws have since changed, but that's just the way the cookie crumbled back then. As I have become a horror host, I've been a huge proponent of the public domain because that is our bread and butter. And I don't want to take away from people who their livelihood, got kind of screwed over this. But bless their hearts, they've done several other films that kind of fell into obscurity. They did There's Always Vanilla. It took so much energy to get through that film. Oh my God. There were some fun scenes, and then it just like went nowhere. And when have you ever seen this film?
I saw little pieces. I couldn't get through it. Okay.
So the whole thing is this guy, like, his dad wants him to, you've got to do this and you got to do this for work. And, there's this whole thing. And he's like, well, if you don't do this job and you don't do this job, it's kind of like going to the ice cream store. That there's always vanilla. And when they did that line, I'm like, what? So anyway, your guest, and remind me of this gentleman's name.
Joe Senna.
Okay. Evidently, he's friends with Russell Striner and the people who are still alive who are doing Night of the Living Dead. And they have every right to try and reclaim this film. But the fact of the matter is, and the law is, despite what, God bless them, the Monster Channel wants to proclaim, it is public domain. And so you were lovely enough to try and help me and lift me up and promote my stage play of this film. Well, I got into a bear trap because they're like, oh, well, you can't do that. And it's, the Monster Channel's position is that it's not public domain. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. You have every right to defend your friends and so forth, but you're wrong.
I felt bad once I said it, and then I saw where it was going. I thought, I should have never opened my big mouth.
You know what? It's fine. The thing is, your heart was in the right place, and you're just like, hey, this is my friend. He wrote the stage play. Let's join him in the conversation. And
it's good. It's a good stage play.
Well, thank you. I've actually revised it a couple of times since then and actually shifted away from it just being so much copied from the movie. I've kind of taken Chief McClellan and the police and expanded that, and the news and expanded that. So, I'm very pleased with my little piece of work that came from the public domain. So, they're all 88 years old, and I love them and I respect these people, but I'm sorry, your movie is public domain. I will also say, and then I'll actually let you talk. I am so sorry.
I'm having fun.
I bring a guest on and I have just completely overtaken this whole thing. The other thing I will say about this is Image 10, which was the production company, which I guess they still have. They have on their website, they're like, if you would like to officially, license this, then you kind of get this is an officially licensed thing. Well, I tried to play ball with them, and I reached out to Russell Striner's brother, who I guess is overseeing this. I can't remember his name. It's some kind of Striner. And I said, hey, I have this stage play, and I actually spoke with George about it when he was alive. And George was like, go forth and produce. Great. And I would love to, give credit where credit's due and have your blessing and get, the official license. I never heard a goddamn thing back from them.
Sorry.
I never heard a damn thing back from them. And then, later on, I reached out to Russell because he and I interviewed each other not each other, but I interviewed him as Demented Features at one of the cons somewhere in Texas. I don't remember where it was. And I just said, hey, just a reminder, this is who I am and this is what I've done. And we actually talked about it in the damn interview. And, I would love to be officially licensed. Never heard a goddamn thing back.
Wow.
And then just as a lark, if you will, our theater company was going to do a full-fledged production of this. And we've actually backed off and actually done a few scenes as a teleplay, which is coming out sometime in probably April. I'll announce that when I have more information, but we were going to do a full-length stage play, and we didn't get the funding for it. But when we were, I just said, fuck it. Let's reach out to Judith O'Day and just say, hey, probably not Barbara, but I have this expanded role for Dr. Grimes, which I've made a woman. And every time I've done it, it's been kind of an eccentric woman, and it's a really fun role. We would love to have you do it. And, you'd probably commit 2 weeks of your life to this. And, we would try and figure out the money to house her and feed her and, all that stuff. Never heard a goddamn thing back from her either. And I kind of was like, okay, she's 300 years old. She's probably not going to do it. I don't even know if she has an agent. I don't even really know if she can act. So, but I would love, I have full respect for these people, but Night of the Living Dead is what it is. These are not professional actors except for Dwayne Jones. And it is what it is. And it's charming because of that. And I can fully say, I have had some terrible performances in my life too. So I'm no better. But anyway, my point of this is that I tried to play by what they think their rules are. And I never heard anything back from them. And I still would if they actually came to me and said, hey, John, If you want to be licensed, it'll cost this much, and we're going to take this much every time you sell a copy. And I mean, I don't make very much money from this, so they may just look at it like, oh, it's not even worth our while, and that's fair. But to reach out to somebody and say, hey, I'd like to basically play your game, and then not hear anything back, that's a little insulting. So anyway,
Yeah.
for whatever it's worth, for to kind of to let my voice be heard as part of this conversation that happened a month or two ago, that is what happened. So
I did feel bad, and I could tell by the way you were saying, well, I could tell how you were feeling, and I'll say this: Halloween Jack, who runs the Monster Channel,
mm-hmm.
I did one of the first Nas, my horror host. One of the first things he did, because I wanted, it's kind of like an homage to you. I didn't do it like you did, but folks, if you're gonna watch something on Halloween, watch Demented features Night of the Living Dead. It's the best hosted Night of the Living Dead, in my opinion. I've said this in a bunch of places, but I did it like kind of an homage to Danvers, like, because you did it.
Thank you.
It's almost got 3,000 views. It's like one of the highest videos I have.
That's awesome.
But after that, I said to Halloween Jack, I said, look, if you want me to take it down, I'll take it down, because I don't want to, I'm on the Monster Channel, and I don't want to. And yeah. He said, no, leave it up. He was saying the only thing is the channel doesn't show it. The channel wouldn't put it on. And I was like, okay, so at least they're not being like, heavy-handed.
Yeah. That part of it. And I mean, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I'm not saying Halloween Jack or the other dude or anything. I'm not questioning their loyalties or their right to do any of that. The only thing I'm saying is that I did do this play, and they can. Your friend can scowl all he wants to, but the fact of the matter is, it's public domain. And that train left the station in 1968. So 50 years later or more, they're not going to be able to stop that. There's no fucking way. So
I apologize for laughing, but your delivery gets me.
But I mean, I love Halloween Jack, and I love the Monster Channel. I love most of those guys. So I think that they have every right to say, we want to make sure that Image 10, however they're making money, I will say this also. I think it's so cool that they've got their own podcast or whatever that is they're doing, and they're like digging up every random zombie that was in the movie that's still alive and giving them their due. I just think that's cool. It's a culturally significant thing. And just to make sure that all those little bits and pieces are explored, because quite frankly, I mean, those people are not going to be around much longer. It's just, time marches on. So, but I mean, it's an incredibly important movie in my life, or else I wouldn't have adapted it. I loved hosting it as Danvers. I'm probably going to revisit it at some point. Yes. So, I'll tell you this. So, we couldn't do the full-fledged play, but we did it as a teleplay, and we're going to do it as kind of a bigger festival of other short form stuff. But we just decided, okay, we're going to concentrate on the news media. And we just did all the interviews and kind of cut together the original film of their reactions and so forth. And it's fun. And we did it in black and white, and we tried to match it to the original film. And I'm for having to scale down as much as we did, I'm very proud of it. that's what public domain stuff is. You kind of take stuff and you create your own thing. And we're honoring the original people and, you know, the original performers and the producers. And I love those people, but, you know, I would rather be part of the family. And I feel like I was, you know, kind of ignored. So it's not for lack of trying. And I'll just kind of put a pin on it right there.
Fair enough. But copyright is funny because I do a thing where I recommend films. And so I've started doing it so people aren't just looking at my ugly mug up on the thing. I've started having the trailer behind me and kind of overlay me where I'm barely visible.
Yeah.
So I recently did Hawk the Slayer from 1980, which I
love that.
It's bonkers and I love it.
Yeah.
Well, they put a copyright claim on the trailer.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I mean, come on. And I had it.
And also that when you're talking about it and you're criticizing it, you know, I mean, critical analysis, let's put it that way. That's considered fair use. Doesn't
matter.
Well, I mean, you can fight it. So you may not win, but you can fight it.
Yeah.
I had to put up, with all this bullshit with YouTube. I did, where am I going with this?
Horror host,
the Alfred Hitchcock thing, blackmail. So that's from 1929. That fell into the public domain this year. And I was like, oh, good. You know, something new. And I guess I was one of the first to do it. And the Vortex showed it. I don't know if the Monster Channel showed it or not, but, some group in England's like, boop, copyright claim. And I'm like, no. And I've discovered how YouTube works. I put in like 1,000 links of like, these are all these news stories of like, this came into the public domain, or these are other people using it, or whatever. And I'm like, let's go to court because I know I will win. And so finally they backed off and they're like, well, it's still copyrighted in the UK. And I'm like, that's fine, but you cannot block it worldwide. You can block it in certain territories. YouTube has that function. But in the US, you've got to release this claim. So they finally did, but it's just like, I am exhausted by fighting YouTube. And I guess that's why I've got such a fire under my ass about it, is because what is inadvertently happened. And I talked to Penny Dreadful about this. Becoming a horror host, I've become this advocate for the public domain. And I fight for it. And I think it's important. And I think it's culturally important. Not just for the horror host, but for everybody. And, you know, Night is kind of one of those things. I mean, it is shitty what happened, but the fact is that it happened. And it's like, you know, then some little UK distributor wants to claim something that has, in 1929, not even through a copyright leaving, you know, that out. It's just, it is what it is. So it's just like, we're going to fight this. And I think the copyright laws should just be revisited, and things need to be tidied up a little bit so that people know what lane they can stay in without getting in trouble with YouTube or whoever else.
That's a good point. That's a great point. I sometimes in the music reviews, I'll use 10 seconds of, say, a Monkeys track, and then it'll come up, this is blocked in Belarus.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, fine. I don't think I have a big presence in Belarus, so that's right. Okay.
But it's like, you know, as we become producers in this new territory that's the internet, things like this just need clarification, because all we're doing when we kind of fight a copyright claim with YouTube is just fighting against a, you know, bot, and no human being is ever laying eyes on it. And it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So I'll try to get off my soapbox about it, but
I think it's important though, and folks, if you want to be a horror host, please let me recommend. I get the title wrong. Is it horror hosting in the 21st century, or what did you call it?
Oh God. Oh, the little thing I did.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So at this Halloween Expo con in New Orleans, this was 2018 or something. I did a lecture on like how to become a horror host. And it's on my Demented Features YouTube channel. So I don't know the exact link, but you can go under Demented Features in YouTube and just kind of look horror hosting in the 21st century or something, and
it was great. It was great. Anybody that wants to be a horror host, and if you want to be, give it a try. Watch that lecture.
Thank you.
Danvers does it in costume. And I'll quote you about copyright. I'll quote you about YouTube flagging things. You say, if I know it's in public domain, I'll see you in court, bitch.
I mean, it's true. And, no, I don't have the funds to go fight, indefinitely. But we do have this wonderful organization here in Texas called the Volunteer Lawyers and Accountants for the Arts. And you pay kind of a small fee, and basically people will volunteer to come help artists to deal with shit like this. So, I mean, when I say I'll meet you in court, I'm not trying to call your bluff. I'm dead serious. So, yay. But I just kind of am like, somebody needs to do something about the public domain issue. And I'm like, well, it's probably going to have to maybe, and I'm not saying this lightly or arrogantly, but I'm like, it may have to be me. It may have to be me that steps up and, changes the world. I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous and arrogant, but I'm like, I don't see anybody else really this angry. And I get stupid angry about it. Because I know that.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step on you.
No. I'm just like, I don't see any human being eyes on YouTube, and like YouTube and Google and, the greater gods, technical gods out there they don't care. Like, as long as, they're fucking people over and making money, they do not care. So at some point, somebody has to step up and go, this is wrong. And there's, it's not even just the public domain. It's a lot of other issues that are affecting tiny YouTube producers like myself. I mean, I barely have 1,000 followers. I'm nothing special here, but, you put a lot of work into an episode, and then some asshole comes along and goes, no, your public domain thing belongs to me. And I'm just, it makes me angry. So anyway, I'll again.
And you have a track record of it, because I think you were the first person when that Disney cartoon went public domain. You immediately, it was like, bam, it was up on your thing. And I was like, hell yeah.
I mean, and I did it as kind of a sort of like, not protest, but I'm like, I didn't even put an episode around. I'm just like, boom, let's do it. And I think with blackmail, the thing that went into the public domain this year, I'm like, what I'm going to do every year at midnight is I will celebrate Public Domain Day by putting in some kind of new thing. And like all my recent episodes are all stuff that fell into the public domain this year, because I know they're safe. Anyway, or they're supposed to be safe.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on. To another topic. Like 30 minutes in, I'm still griping about this. But anyway, I think people should check out your stuff and your podcast, because there's some, I mean, it starts a greater conversation. And again, I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes, or I'm not against anybody. I just think this conversation needs to be had. And it can be respectful. But I think that keeping these vintage movies into, making the public aware of them. There's some really wonderful things out there. There's also garbage, and we all know it. But if we keep talking, I mean, it's like the Monkees. I remember when I was when that was being syndicated again on television. I was, a kid, but I loved it, and I would watch every day. I remember a summer, maybe middle school or elementary school, but remember watching it every day. And like nobody knows who the Monkees are anymore. So it's important to keep that stuff alive.
Absolutely.
So you're doing the work too, and I applaud you for it. So
sometimes I'll work around because they get cagey. They'll take a public domain. I don't know if this is a specific one, but say the Killer Shrews. But just for an example, I don't know whether it is or not. But somebody will copyright the music.
Yeah.
So I scrub the music off and I put my own music on, and then it passes.
Well, the other thing that those assholes will do is they will sample part of the music from it, and they'll go into like CD Baby or something and copyright that little bit.
Yep. And
then it's still public domain, but because of their little sneaky workaround, that's what I call a copyright troll. Yeah. Because they have no right to do it, and you can fight it, but they've gone through this workaround to try and screw people. So it just, and that's what I mean. Things need to be overhauled so shit like that doesn't happen. But until YouTube or Google or somebody wants to do something about it, then, it just is what it is. And it's a huge pain in the ass. So
exactly.
Tell us about your band, the Madbloods.
Well, the band, that's how everything started. That's how the channel started. It was a physical band. And then I've got ruptured discs in my neck and very slowly losing the use of my left arm. So bass playing is no longer a thing. So I've been doing electronic music because I got one good hand I can do the keyboard with. And
it's always good to have at least one good hand.
At least one, exactly. And so we kind of will do like rap stuff because that doesn't require playing an instrument. And we're going to be moving back to where Yoshi lives. We're 5 hours away from him now. When we get back to where he lives,
Yoshi. I'm sorry.
Yes, the ladies and the men love him. He gets a lot of attention. I probably shouldn't say this on here, but there is a dude who kept telling him, this guy kept saying, "I want to get you on my boat. You can't get away from me on my boat."
Oh, wow.
I was like, creepy. Come on, dude.
Yikes.
It's like, but anyway,
look, I'll have to, no, I was going to say something like that was me, and it was some sort of like, it was not, I swear. I'm creepy in other ways, not that way.
Well, I do remember Captain Barnacle. Captain Barnacle said, if Sweet Yushi wants to be the big bad booty daddy, he needs to
say that.
Take a deep breath.
Oh,
and bend over. That Captain Barnacle's wild, man.
Oh my God, Captain Barnacle. Captain Barnacle is he's out on the 7 seas right now. I'm sure he'll come back to land and visit at some point.
He's drinking them dark and stormies.
Captain Barnacle gets pissed off at people at the pirate community, and so he's like, "Fuck you guys," and then he'll come back and do something. So
yeah, so the band is, we still make music, but it's in different forms, and we'll always be making our silly little songs.
I love it though. All right, so you did a song with another horror host not long ago.
Yes, Octavian Hollow.
And at first, I'm like, is that the motherfucker that was fucking with me? And I guess it's not, but first I'm like, wait a minute. So anyway,
It
and
was
then, and
not.
then I went down the rabbit hole. I'm like, is Raoul fucking with me? Is this all some like big extravagant scam? But no, I mean, it's not. So, but you know, that's why Danvers is on medication. So
No, that was Octavian Hollow. He's been a friend for a long time, and that definitely is not the guy that was messing with.
good, because I like him and I think he's a lot of fun. So
That, you know what's funny? Can I just say this? And I'm not naming any names. So
no, you can say any. Look, this is no holds barred. Go ahead.
You know, some people have said the word slash hole. I don't know. Maybe that's an appropriate term, but that guy is like completely irrelevant. I don't think he's even doing shows now. So
Yeah.
Karma doesn't forget an address, folks.
I mean, when it really comes down to it, I'm not sure I'm relevant either, but you know, I sure have fun doing it. So, you know, there you go. So you moved to Australia. You've been there for many years at this point. What is the culture, like the horror culture there like?
Well, to be honest, it's kind of a hard question to answer.
I mean, I know you're on an island kind of separated from everybody else, but you know.
But I'm also a shut-in. I don't leave the house unless I have to. So there are cons here. There's like horror cons, and in the bigger cities, like the international cities, like Sydney, Melbourne, I think in Brisbane as well. But of course, I've never been to any.
Yeah.
And I'm very backwards looking. I kind of checked out of films in general around the late 80s. I kind of checked out. But I did see the recent Nosferatu remake. It's gorgeous to look at. It's very gorgeous to look at. I didn't like it. I didn't need to see Nosferatu's penis. I didn't necessarily didn't need to see his schlong hanging out.
I mean, I was like, what in the fuck is going on?
I'm a Bela Lugosi fan. I don't think Bela would have got his dick out. I mean,
you know, had he lived a few more years, who knows what Ed Wood would have tried to get him to do. So let's film this fucker. Oh my God.
I just thought the way they changed the story, they never said how this girl awakened him. How?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why is it all about the girl all of a sudden? I don't mind a female being the center of the film, but I want to see Nosferatu. Make your own vampire story.
Right. It's just like, you know, give us. I think there's something to be said of leaving some mystery, but when you establish something that's central to the story, it would have been nice to be like, you know, there was something occult or mystical, and that was very much part of the original. And you know, maybe Robert Eggers is like, well, I guess you guys will just assume that, but you know, there's a lot of dumb people in the world.
But can I
love the comments like, oh, I didn't know this was an old black and white film. I'm like, what? So yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, as a theater person, can I ask your thought? Because it's gorgeous to look at. It's you can take a picture and look at it for years.
I thought it was, and I love period costume. Robert Eggers has said something like he just never wants to do modern stuff, and I am totally on board with that. And I've actually been criticized because I either do fantasy or period film, and they're like, well, you should just do something small scale. I'm like, why do that? And so Robert Eggers kind of has validated what I have felt all along. So I love that. When I can't remember the actor's name, he was Thomas Hutter. But his sheer terror was the first time I think I've ever seen a believable moment where like I really believed the fear. And like they didn't try and pretty it up. I mean, I talk about how I love Hammer horror, but Hammer tries to pretty things up. And I mean, and that was their look and that was their style. But this was so gritty. And I did believe, except for Taylor Thomas, I didn't necessarily believe all his stuff, his acting choices. I'd like to see it again, and maybe I'll change my mind. I've only seen it once in the theaters. But for the most part, I really enjoyed the performances. I thought they were very strong. I believed who these people were. I believed their situation. And so, you know, I mean, stylistically, were there some choices that were a little kind of something I would have done differently? Sure. Right. But I stand behind Robert Eggers and his choices and his vision. And I mean, I thought it was a gorgeous film, and I hope that it wins some kind of recognition at the Oscars. So,
can I please ask you, the main woman that was acting? I don't know what the term is, but sometimes is it called indicating? She didn't convince me sometimes, but maybe that's just me.
No, I mean, and I think part of my problem is that I know she's Johnny Depp's daughter, and there's a stigma. I love Johnny Depp, and I love most of his stuff, most of it, but there's a stigma to being, you know, some very high profile actor's, you know, daughter. Right. I thought she did very well, but yes, I thought that there was some indication, and what that means for people who are, you know, not actors or, you know, studied this stuff is that instead of kind of living that moment and really believing you're in that moment, you're suggesting it, you're indicating it. So you're not quite in that moment, and it reads to the audience that way. It's like, I don't really believe you, and it takes you out of the film for a second.
That was it. And I did a review of it with Ginger Ninja, who's another YouTuber who does movie reviews, and I didn't know how to say it at the time, but I was saying that it was like she was showing me this is what acting is.
Yeah. It's like, I'm showing you that I'm scared, or I'm showing you that I'm possessed, or I'm showing it instead of like, I'm really. So have you ever seen the TV series Penny Dreadful?
Oh, no, I have not caught that yet.
Okay. It's really fantastic. It gets a little rushed by the end of the series because they had to, you know, wrap things up very quickly. I think in the first season, Eva Green, who plays the, you know, main, lady protagonist, she gets possessed at the seance, and she just, like, I believed her. And I mean, the writhing and the kind of things they were trying to do in Nosferatu, I just thought she did it better because she wasn't like on the verge of trying to do it. She just fucking got in there and did it.
Right.
So watch it. But I think that's what you're kind of referring to, is it's like these, and the thing is, she like had the I'm possessed. She did it 2 or 3 or 4 times. And right. I think if you do it once, it's a very strong choice. But when you do it over and over again, and you have to top it. There has to be somewhere to go. Right. And it just, you know, it just doesn't, you don't believe it the second and third and fifth time, you know?
What a great point. I appreciate that, because I felt, you know, she took me out of the film.
And it may not have been her fault. It's like, how do you do that 30 times in the same film and then, you know, make it believable again? So
have you seen The Lighthouse?
I have.
Now, my friend, that is a homoerotic film. If ever there was one, let me tell you.
It very true. Yes. I
through the whole thing.
I quite enjoyed that film, but at the same time, it creeps you the fuck out, because it's just like, we've all had that fucked up coworker, and you know, and whoever was crazy at the end, they both were. Neither, who knows? And I love that ambiguity to it. But it's like, wow, that was some messed up stuff. I will say, like, everybody's like, well, I didn't like The Northman so much. And I tried to watch The Northman, and I get what they're saying. It's like,
I thought it was awesome.
I haven't made my way through it all the way.
Okay.
Yet. So I need to maybe give it a bigger chance. And sometimes, you sit down in a movie and like, I'm not really even into watching anything right now.
Yes.
But you put something on and you're like, I'm going to try and do this. And you're just you're not focused on it. And I think that's kind of what the case was when I was doing The Northman. I'm like, I'm going to put on a movie and then like clean or whatever it is work. And you just can't do that. You have to focus on what's going on.
That man, Eggers, he's so good with sound, because there's a scene in The Northman where the berserkers are around a fire and there's this guy with this horned helmet on, but the camera's to his back. And he's doing this chanting. And I tell you what, man, it took me, I was there. I was like, I wanted to be there chanting with him. It was like hypnotic.
You've seen The Witch, I'm sure.
No, that's the one I haven't
seen. Oh my God. So, I mean, that was my crack cocaine going into Robert Eggers. Being someone that loves that period style, who studied like, the 16th and 17th, 18th centuries, and, knowing that part of history very well and kind of understanding that folklore, I mean, it was like, oh my God, this movie is absolutely for me. And he took all of these accounts from actual court documents of this is what people thought, and this is how they spoke, and this is what they said. And so he created a script around real documents and how their language was. And so, in that, you absolutely believed what was going on. So this very supernatural, crazy thing was so grounded in reality. And I just loved it. So
I got to see it now. So I guess I'm saying all this to say modern film can be great. And there are people like Eggers, but then there's like Fast and Furious 26. And right. I don't care to ever see that garbage. I don't ever want to see that.
And, I mean, I have enjoyed some of the past Marvel stuff. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and be a snob about it. There's a lot of stuff that I love to just check out and watch shit blow up. But at the same time, I mean, I will sit here and watch BBC, 18-hour Nicholas Nickleby and Charles Dickens stuff and absolutely love it. Like I'm an old lady. So, but I mean, it comes from my love of, historic costuming and period literature and theater and, and old film and, all the reasons why I became a horror host in the first place is because I just love and celebrate this stuff. And I've just, I was always a weird, nerdy kid. And so in kind of becoming a horror host, I just sort of embraced all that. I'm like, well, let's just put it on display.
What is it? But what is it? Can I, the last thing I flipped this around. I'm asking
you're the guest here. You anything you want.
But I'd love to know, as a theater person, if you've written plays, you've acted, you've made theater, what is the 1931 Dracula like for you? Because I love it. It's what made me a monster kid.
Me too. So Frankenstein and Dracula were those films. I've heard people like I hate doing this because like I love these people and then I never can remember their name. The guy who's the producer of The Walking Dead. So he studied under Tom Savini and he he came to the set of Dawn of the Dead. And he's like watching, these Romero films changed his DNA. That's kind of, I'm quoting him here. And I mean, when I talk about Night of the Living Dead and I talk about Dracula and Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein and the original Nosferatu, and the original Phantom of the Opera, those things changed my DNA. And I, especially Phantom of the Opera and watching Lon Chaney, that for me, it's just like, it's so good. And I love silent film, and especially watching a master like Lon Chaney, because, you know, he grew up with deaf parents. So he had this just natural ability to articulate feeling with his body and his hands. And watching that had such an impression upon me. And then likewise with Bela Lugosi, because he could just stand there and just be still and still like exude everything that he needed to convey. And poor Bela, I think that he was not recognized for the genius that he was.
Absolutely.
And you know, being a gay man, James Whale had a huge impression on me. And you know, Bride of Frankenstein is absolute gay camp to the, you know, ends of the
Dr.
earth and
Pretorius?
back. Yes, Dr. Pretorius. So my friends at the public access station, they're all gay people, but they've been helping me produce Demented features this season, and they've started calling me Dr. Pretorius, and I'm like, okay, you know,
hey, that's a compliment.
It is a compliment. But when you talk about these films, they are so moody, and just like the set design and the camera work. Of course, Karl Freund was I think in Dracula, he may have been in Frankenstein too. You know, he came from German Expressionism camera work there, and then did Dracula. I know he did Dracula. I can't remember if he did Frankenstein or not. But that German Expressionist feeling in those films, it was just amazing. Those early Universal films were just, they made me want to be an actor and do film and do theater. And I mean, they absolutely made me a monster kid. And I came around just at the right time in the, you know, 70s and 80s when, you know, they had the Dracula, and Dracula came into the public domain in the 70s. So, you know, I'm looking over here at my NECA figures, and they had the mini monsters and the Remco monsters, and I had all of that stuff. And I mean, I loved it. So yes, the monster. Oh, I got the new NECA one because I can't afford the original. Bobby Gamonster has an original Monsterizer.
Oh,
and I'm like, let me buy that off of you. He's like, fuck no. So
if it disappears, Bobby, it was me.
It's true. Bobby's collection is absolutely amazing.
That man lives the gimmick. I can't.
It's crazy. He has got, I mean, I like walk through his house and just see his collection, and I'm like that could pay for your, you know, house right there. So anyway.
Yeah. I shouldn't say he lives the gimmick, because for him, it's not a gimmick. It's
no.
Him.
I mean, it's him. I love what Bobby does, and just they're really cool people to me. So
yes,
him and Melissa both. So
you mentioned silent film. Have you seen Vampire, the one with the Y?
I have, yes.
Oh my goodness, I watched that. I had to get up and go to my wife and said that film disturbed me.
Yeah.
The scene where the girl, her face slowly changes. Yeah. Oh my gosh, dude, that got me. That got me.
It's just these, and the thing I love about them is that there was no precedent, really. You know, film was still, people were still experimenting with things, and trying to find their own voice. And so like they pushed the envelope, especially the German and European stuff, because they didn't have the damn Hays Code. Is that right? Hays Code. Restricting them like they did in the US. And I know that came along a little later, but still, they were trying to experiment and find things, and being able to do that. There's some creepy stuff out there. And I just love it because, they were pulling inspiration from theater. So like, you're stealing from the people that, influence you, but it's like film now has been around for 100 plus years. So it's like, we've kind of seen, it's very rare when somebody can bring something and it's like, oh my God. And I think the new Nosferatu was a little bit like that. It's like, we've seen it, but we haven't seen it, or we haven't seen it in a while. So new generations will come up to it and it's like, this is new. I mean, it's not new, but for some people it is. And getting them into, I think it can be a gateway to go back and revisit some old films and the original Dracula and the original Frankenstein. And, and I love the Wolfman too. I don't think it has aged well, because you look at Lon Chaney's character and you're like, wow, you are a creeper. Because he looks through the telescope at that lady. He's like, hey,
yeah,
will you go up to your bedroom and get the earrings that I spied on? And she's like, I'd be like, what? 911. But minus that, and that Claude Rains is no more Lon Chaney Jr.'s father than the Man in the Moon. But hey,
this folks, this is why two monster kids talking is fast. I could listen to Danvers talk all day long.
All right, well, let's we talked about this when we originally did this, to kind of like wrap this up, because I know you're preparing for your storm, and God knows, I hope you're okay.
My imminent demise.
Your imminent, landfall. Hopefully not demise. I get your collection if you do, though. What would you say? Like, we both have this like monster kid mentality. What do you think that is? Like, if you had to define a monster kid, what would you say that is?
Wow, different to what time period you grew up in, because I think I'm probably older than you. I'm pushing 60.
I don't know. Oh, okay. Well, I'm not far behind you. I'm about to turn 52. So
we kind of grew up when there was 5 channels, 3 main and 2 UHF. Yeah. We didn't have a lot of choice. We kind of had a common, if you were our monster kid into spooky stuff, you kind of were watching the same stuff.
Right.
In the same geographical area. So it was kind of a common lexicon, a common language. But a monster kid that's growing up in the 90s, their experience is going to be so different.
Oh, yeah. Well, even in the 80s. I mean,
yeah. True.
And I think it's interesting, because I was right on the cusp. And I mean, you're a little earlier, so you were exposed to like the real horror hosts. I think you probably got that. I didn't get the originals. I got the cable ones.
Right. Who were good. They were good too.
And they were good too. Yeah. But like, I didn't, but I was on the cusp just before the 80s slasher came in.
Right.
I still got like the Hammer stuff and the Universal stuff, and I understood what an Aurora model was, and the horror comics, and I got all of that stuff. And I mean, so I got the flavor of what the original Monster Kids got. And so I appreciate, from a very young age, I appreciated, the Frankenstein and the Dracula and the Phantom of the Opera and, all of those things. And then, as we get into the 80s, then you get into the, Friday the 13th and Michael Myers. And I appreciate all that stuff too. And I don't think yeah, there are I think I talked about this when we tried to do this before. There are gatekeepers out there who are like, well, if you weren't born by this time and you weren't into, this stuff, then you're not a monster kid. I think that's bullshit. There
Yes.
can be a 90s monster kid. There can be a 2025 monster kid.
It just looks different.
It just looks different.
Yeah.
And that's just part of it. It's like you have an evolution. And, I would love it if, kind of culturally a monster kid understood what Famous Monsters of Filmland was. And, I think you kind of have to hold a torch.
There is some of that. Yeah.
I think you kind of have to understand what came before, and you need to have an appreciation. Like I need to have an appreciation for horror now, even though I think a lot of it is just garbage. Because it takes a lot to like get invested and scared of stuff. I mean, there's stuff out there like Hereditary I thought was fantastic. But I don't think you're a monster kid if you just grew up in in the 50s, 60s, 70s. You can be a monster kid at any age and be born at any time. So I don't think it's healthy or necessary to have the gatekeepers out there. Like, no.
Yeah, I hate that, and they're in everything. I mean, if you get into punk, if you get into punk rock, well, you're not a real punk if you haven't listened to. Go get stuffed.
Yeah.
You define what you are. If you want to be a monster kid and you're into creepy pastas and you watch everything on YouTube, that's fine.
And I mean, I love the whole creepypasta phenomenon because it puts some terror and mystery back into. We all are a little scared of the internet.
Yes.
And the creepypastas play off of that. And I think it's a genius and unique way to look at what our culture is now.
Yeah, and get those urban legends back, because I'm sure you probably had this where you grew up, but where I was, there's a killer in the woods.
Oh yeah.
Every once in a while you hear his gun. You can hear him whistle sometimes, but you hear his gun every now and then, because every once in a while you'd hear a gun.
Yeah.
And that was the killer in the woods, and that kind of stuff. I don't know. It made for an atmosphere, I guess.
It did, yeah. And we both grew up around the Satanic Panic stuff.
Yes.
And I mean, I was put into a Baptist middle school.
Oh.
And it was not a great time. But they brainwash you. Mm-hmm. And then you have the Satanic Panic on top of that. And you're just like, I mean, I'm this impressionable little kid. And you're like, But then you go home and you're comforted by your monsters. And it seems like you're by your Gregory.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, if anybody wants to sell me their vintage 1980 Gregory cheaply, you just let me know.
My man Johnny Vintage owns a vintage toy store, Toys in the Attic.
Oh,
he's in Stanton, Virginia, so maybe he can hook you up. I'll mention that to him.
Okay. Okay. There's
and I'd like to just
I'm looking forward to. So,
and everybody, check out the Macabre Tourist. It's one thing that Mr. Faust has done that I love. I hope he does more. This man can do stuff like that. Some people do it and they're not so good at it. You do it and you're very good at it.
Well, thank you. I'll tell you, I guess this is my new announcement. So I live in Houston, Texas right now. I don't particularly like Houston, Texas, but here I am. And like we all need work. So a friend of mine is like, oh, have you ever heard of this ghost tour group? And I'm like, no. So I reached out to them because I've been a tour guide in Dallas. I did like the JFK assassination tour. And when I was in college, I worked at Fort William Henry, which is where Last of the Mohicans takes place. And, I've been a tour guide on and off since college. I lived in Charleston, South Carolina. I did all that shit. So I'm like, well, let's see if, they'll hire me. So I've been hired to be a ghost tour guide at this pub crawl. And as you go down the rabbit hole of where these stories originated and what these buildings mean and the history of it. So I'm sure I'll be like, oh, let's do a macabre tourist episode out of that. So
yes.
So
are you going to do the tour? Are you going to be Danvers as a tour guide?
I'm sure there's a sprinkling of Danvers in there, but they want you to kind of just tell the story. So I'll try not to go crazy, but no, they have this little vest and top hat, and you're supposed to be a spooky Wild West character or something. I don't know. But
who better than John Faust to do that?
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun when it's August and I'm doing it too. So,
well, we went over your hour. You put an hour limit on it.
Oh, I mean, that's fine. I spent 30 minutes of that bitching about public domain. So,
but I think it's good to have your say as well, because I get what he's saying, that I think Romero was always bitter that he didn't make money.
Well, I mean, I'm sure he was. And I mean, I would be bitter too. I would be devastated, maybe to the point where I never wanted to do anything again.
Right.
So I mean, I can only imagine how they feel. And they redid Night in 1990, which I think is a fantastic film. And so, I mean, it's not like they haven't made money or gotten recognition off of this.
Right.
But to try and do a push now, just seems a little.
That horse has left the barn.
I think that horse has left the barn. And again, I don't think there's anything wrong with him being like, our opinion is they need to make money from this. And
right.
And I agree. And that's why I reached out and I'm like, hey, give me your blessing and let's work together. But like when somebody doesn't answer their emails, there's not much I can do. And I'm not going to pull my play just because somebody else's opinion is like, oh, well, they need their due. And I think so too, but at the end of the day, I legally have the right to do it. So it just is what it is.
Like you said, you tried to do it. So what more can you do? What can be done?
Yeah. And I mean, if you talk to this guy, feel free to like give him the link to this or tell him my side of the story. And maybe, if he has connections, which I guess he does to, these original producers, maybe that starts a conversation and I, for better or for worse, get on their radar.
Yeah.
And like, let's work together. I mean, I'm absolutely open to doing that. I'm not going to pay some outrageous fee that I can't afford just, to kind of get a stamp of approval. I'm fine being unofficial, but I'm still within my legal rights. So
right.
I'm not hurting anybody. I don't think ethically I'm hurting anybody. So, I mean, if they were out on the street and, screwed, that would be a completely different story. But I know they make a lot of money doing their convention appearances and the merchandise that they, do officially license. And, I
think even Hare Krishna Zombie's making money at conventions.
I'm sure he is. Yeah. He's one of the most memorable ones. So, so I'll, I don't want to go into this again, but I am willing to work with them, but I am not going to beg. I'm not going to reach out again. I feel like I've done it 3 times basically, and I haven't heard anything back. So, that's on them at this point.
You're just like me. I reached out to Dr. Madblood for an interview. He said yes.
Oh, wow.
Great. I marked out. I was like, yeah, Madblood, Then I got the message, we need to reschedule. Okay, no problem. And then it was, I need to check with my team. And then he ghosted me.
Yeah.
Then he ghosted me. And I'm like, dude, you're the character is still my hero, but like, why do that? I know he's old,
right.
old,
right,
but he's still making Halloween shows every Halloween. So it's like, dude, I just want half an hour. That's it.
It's devastating when that shit happens. And that's why I'm really cautious about like meeting my heroes, because I mean, I lived in LA for a while. I've kind of had a taste of what this world is, and I don't trust any of those people. I mean, I've looked behind the curtain and it's not pretty. So, you know, I'm scared to meet people because I don't want them to be an asshole. I will say, like, when I was studying with the Groundlings, I went to a performance one night, and one of the ladies who has been in many films, and she was in Austin Powers, and I think she's in a commercial now for some car, but she's just delightful. And I met her, and she just made me feel like $1,000,000. I mean, she was interested in me, and like, it just takes so little effort to just be nice for 2 minutes to somebody, and you change their world. Like, I'll probably never see her again, but it's just like, I will always remember that she took 30 seconds to just make a little connection with me. And that's all it takes. And honestly,
John Faust is like that.
Yeah. Well, I try to be, because I know what it's like to be on the other end of when, I mean, I'll name names. So I met and did an interview. It's online with Tom Savini. And then I went to a convention and like said hello to him and kind of reminded him who I was. And he's like,
no.
And I'm like, oh, okay.
No.
But I mean, Tom Savini is absolutely batshit crazy too. So, you know.
You know who he reminds me of? Do you remember the actor Will Smith?
Oh, yeah.
He kind of reminds me of Will Smith a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you know, who knows what goes on in people's heads, but it's just like, don't put yourself out in the public. He could have just easily faked it and be like, oh, it's so nice to see you again. And I'll be like, it's nice to see you too. Have a good convention. Bye. That's how that conversation would have gone. But instead, he's like, I feel like David Letterman when he was making fun of people.
That's kind of why I stopped doing interviews, because it's soul crushing to reach out to people, and they leave you on red for a year, or if you take anything from this, folks, take this little nugget of advice from Sneaky Raoul. If you're trying to get interviews and they say, let me check with my team, you're not going to get it.
You're not. It's hell will freeze over first.
Yes.
So. And I'm like, you know what? You know, if you have to check with your team and we've already been communicating, then you're full of shit. I mean, like, you know, make a decision for yourself. So anyway.
And definitely check out Demented Features, one of the greatest horror hosts going. If you don't watch Night of the Living Dead, copyright or no, watch Danvers eat KFC hosting.
Oh my God. Yeah. I forgot
love
about
it.
that.
I love it. Danvers is childlike. Nas is childlike. So you can see that connection there.
What needs to happen this year at some point, we'll do it either through Zoom or you can pre-film it or however we do it. We have to collaborate and do an episode together.
I will be in hog heaven. Heaven with that.
That's absolutely going to happen. So we'll make that our goal.
All
right. Well, we are we're doing pretty good. Hour 20 something, hour 17. You know, 90% of it was me bitching, but you know,
hey, it needed to be
welcome to Monster Kid Playground. So
who's coming up next on Monster Kid Playground? I want to know.
So we do have we have recorded a episode with Penny Dreadful, which is lovely. We're going to have Dr. Sarcophagi on in the near future. And then I'm going to reach out to some other people, and I guess I don't want to say who they are in case they say, well, let me check with my team. So I will say, Penny, yeah, Penny has already kind of like set this up for me. So, I'll just embarrass her if she says no. But Penny's collaborator, Rebecca, who directed and then she played one of the characters as well. I want to talk to her and do, a whole interview with her because she was kind of part of like what made Shilling Shockers what it is. She was kind of the engine. And I think those stories are just as important because you get a different perspective on like what goes on behind the scenes and how difficult or, the fun stories that, go along with producing this stuff. And, I want to talk to other than just horror hosts. I want to talk to like people who collect, toys and, some comic writers. And, there is one toy designer I'm trying to talk to, and he's like, well, we can't talk about this because we have got an NDA with Mattel. And I'm like, oh, okay. That means Mattel's going to produce your toys again. And he, we know some stuff he did from back in the 80s, but I don't,
Can't mention Shilling Shockers without saying Guru forever.
Oh God, I loved Guru. I remember meeting Guru at PowerCon, and he was just such a delightful, loving person. And talk about one of those people that'll just take 30 seconds to connect with you and you change their world forever. That's what Guru was. So I do have another story about Guru though.
Oh, okay.
And we'll end the episode on this. And I've told Penny this, so this is not anything new, but it is a little scandalous. So I guess this might have been the first PowerCon. And after hours, like there's a big party up in one of the suites and there's a lot of drinking and so forth. Well, my husband, Kevin, didn't come that year. So I was kind of alone. And there was this little guy who I was talking to most of the night. And after a while, I mean, he was fully hitting on me. And I'm like, oh, well, But I'm pretty sure had I wanted to, I would have gotten some loving. For a good year and a half, I kind of put two and two together and thought that was Guru. Because they were about the same height and, all of that. And then finally they're like, oh no, that was not Guru, I promise. And I'm like, who in the hell was it? And like everybody like, who knows? Who knows what random person that was? And then I remember telling, after he had passed, I told Penny that story, and she's like, no, John, I promise you that was. And I mean, we had a big laugh about it. Because I did not know that they were trans either at that time. And so, I mean, anyway, it was funny because, when you realize things don't line up, then it's hysterical. But at the time, I was very naive. I was brand new to this group of people. Like I knew them online, but didn't know them in person, and just this whole thing. So it was hysterical. But anyway, I love Guru. And Guru did not hit on me, I promise.
That's the point.
That's the point. Yeah. But he was a lovely person when I actually did meet him, and so I feel like I've just put my foot in my mouth and just shoved it down as far as it'll go.
No, that's a nice story because, and what a beloved character on Shilling Shockers.
He was. Too. And I mean, they were so sweet to me because I had asked them, will you do this little, pre-recorded bit? And they did it. And then he passed, and I didn't get it for a long time, and I was very like, do I even ask if I can have it? And they finally got it to me, but it was just I can't imagine going through that. And
no sir,
I love Penny so much, and she's such a good friend, and she's been so supportive of me, as have you. Like, the people who I'm really close to, it's just like, you guys mean so much to me because you're so supportive, and I'm hoping that I'm supportive of you as well. But it's like we find our tribe and we just kind of grab onto them and never.
Can I make one point on that?
Of course.
Okay. If you're coming into the horror host community or the Monster Kid community, don't be naive. Don't have stars in your eyes. Listen. No. I'm gonna. It's analogous to going to a sporting event. Say you like the Dallas Cowboys and you go to a stadium. It's all Dallas Cowboys fans. You're all cheering for the same team. That does not mean you're going to be friends with everybody. It doesn't mean everybody can be trusted, and it doesn't mean you want to hang out with everybody.
Right.
I was very naive when I first came on the set and paid the price for that. But don't be naive. Don't assume just because you like the same stuff that you're going to be, everybody's going to be your friend.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. But I mean, and that's like that with any fandom.
Absolutely.
Anybody that knows me and has listened to me over the years, I'm a huge Masters of the Universe fan, and have been part of that fandom for over a decade now. I've been collecting it my entire life, so over 40 plus years. But I guess I've been really part of the fandom. Well, yeah, about a little over a decade. There are, good eggs and there are bad eggs, and, you get along with some people, and some are, like at PowerCon, there was somebody was up doing, one of the things they do where you have a guest speaker come up and, do whatever. And I wasn't in the room, but I was right outside the room and kind of heard the aftermath. But some asshole comes up and they're like, white power. And
what?
They were basically tackled and thrown out.
Yeah.
So it's just God bless them all. And this may be really controversial, what I'm about to say. And it is what it is. But like when you get into hardcore fandom, whether it's horror or toys or 80s stuff or 90s stuff or whatever your toy or geek thing du jour is, there is a spectrum of people. Some people grab onto this because they have mental issues or development issues, or they're just geeky kids. I probably fall into every one of those categories, but I've seen some people that that's all they have. I'll just put it that way. You know what I mean? Am I making sense here?
It's their whole world, and they will die on every hill.
And so when you get people who are that passionate and that attached to a property or a fandom, especially if they don't get out much, don't have a lot of social skills, and that does happen, quite frankly. We both are homebodies. We don't get out much. So you can get to some very extreme personalities, and if it's not their way or what they have imagined in their head, then everybody else is completely invalidated.
Yes.
So I think that is kind of what the issue can become with these big fandoms, and it's the same thing in horror hosting.
And
And I mean,
being,
you
if
know,
I, sorry, I'm sorry,
no, no,
stepping on you. I just wanted to make the point to say you're passionate is not a blanket excuse for being rude or condescending or arrogant.
right,
Passion doesn't give you the right to condescend or be arrogant or rude to somebody.
right, right. And I mean, and that's kind of why I'm so trepidatious, if that's the right word, about talking about the Night of the Living Dead issue, is because I have no, there's no disrespect here at all. Again, you know, it's just a conversation, and I applaud him wanting to defend the original producers and Russell Streiner and you know, everybody, because it is their film and it is their property, and an unfortunate thing happened. I'm not going to sit here and go "Brr," and that's why I'm like, okay, well, let me play your game. So we only have to get back into that, but it's just like, it's the same thing. People are very protective of whatever. It's like Marvel and you know, every other big corporate property. You've got collectors and people very passionate, and the you know, the comic people and the movie people, and that clashes because they're like, oh, well, that's, you know, that's not how it was, and that's not what I grew up with, and that's not my, you know, experience. And that's when people can get obnoxious. And it's just
Yes.
like, you know what? These things are put out in the world, and they're for everybody, and they can be enjoyed by everybody in their own way. Um, and like when this, I'll go back to the Masters of the Universe metaphor again. There's this new movie coming out in next year, and we've been waiting 15 years for this, because they'll announce a movie and they're like, nope, and they'll announce a movie and they're like, it's coming out this date, nope, and then we're kind of like, we'll believe it when we see it. And now we're seeing images from the set, and so some people are like, oh, I bet it's going to be a piece of shit. Nah. And it may be. Who knows? We might get another 87 that becomes a raw garbage open pit, but becomes a cult classic. Who knows? And it may be brilliant. It may be fun, and, you know, all those things. We just don't know. But it's like, either way, it's a thing that's been put out there for us to enjoy, and we can enjoy it or not. But that doesn't mean, like, if I enjoy it and you don't, or let's say you enjoy it and I don't go and go, well, you just are wrong and you're a piece of shit. And blah, blah. You don't do that. I could say, oh, you know, I didn't have the same experience. I didn't really enjoy it. I loved Nosferatu's giant penis on the screen. You know, that doesn't mean your opinion is invalidated. It's just, you know, and I just wish that people could step back a little bit and think before they talk. I struggle with anxiety and depression and things like that, like everybody does. And so for my mental health, when I'm filming Demented features, I'm like, okay, this isn't fun right now. So I need to step back and just reevaluate what it is I'm doing and where I want to go with this. And I've had to do that several times. And there are some years where I haven't produced anything, and there's some years that I might produce once every 6 months. I'm trying to keep a thing now where I do fortnightly, bi-weekly, and I'll probably cut it off around May, and then I'll come back in October, like, you know, I usually do. And that seems to be doable right now. I may step back from that again and be like, okay, we'll do it once a month, or we'll do it once every other month. But then, you know, you get criticized. Well, you're not putting anything out very often, so you're not a real horror host, or you're not there. And I'm just like, well, you know, that's your experience. You know, I actually have a family and a job and shit that I have to go do, and you have to kind of juggle what's important to me right now. and Demented Features isn't paying the bills. Hell, I'm lucky if I get 100 views on an episode. So it's like, that is not my priority. I love doing it, but that's just the way it is. And your internet has probably died, but you're still recording. So I'll just kind of leave it at this. We do what we can. And those of us who criticize us for that, I feel like are wrong. But I have loved having you on.
It blinked out entirely.
That's okay. I kept going. So I'm like, he's probably gone, but I'll finish my statement because it looks like I'm still recording.
Hey, yeah, nobody has the right to say this particular person, oh, you can't be a part-timer, you're not a real horror host. Go get stuffed. You can do whatever you want. Some people that have only put out 4 episodes are better than anything that guy ever did in his life or ever will do.
Yeah. Well, I'm not trying to dig up all of that old shit, but it just kind of goes with the bigger conversation of gatekeepers and people that are like so passionate about their little part of the fandom that they can't understand somebody that doesn't think like they do. So it just kind of, and it's unfortunate on any level of whatever, your nerdgasm is. Yes. But we live our lives and we enjoy the things we enjoy, and when they are not giving us joy, it's healthy to step back and just be like, let's take a break from it for a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that.
People say it as an insult, but it's really good advice. Touch grass, go outside.
Oh, God, yeah. but here's the other thing that I just don't understand. There's nothing wrong with being a homebody. You've said it, I've said it. I don't like people very much, especially now. But at the same time, by going out and experiencing certain parts of the world that you do enjoy that are separated from your fandom or your horror hosting or whatever, you get inspiration to go do either other things or to add to your toolbox, if you will. So like for Demented Features, I'm just going to plainly say it. I've made the decision, and I think it started to creep in there. There's no there's gay horror hosts, but there's no horror host that make that part of their character. And so in trying to develop my audience, I want the LGBT community, I want to be their horror host. So I'm incorporating more camp and those things into Demented Features. I would not have really come to that conclusion if I hadn't gotten out some and experienced other things and gotten away from Demented Features a little bit and talked to some other friends and kind of brainstormed. Because if you just kind of I'm going to stay in my little thing and I'm not going to develop. I've always said Demented Features is an experiment. I want to evolve. I want to be better than I was, yesterday. And I want to do new things. And sometimes I've tried it and it has failed spectacularly. And that's okay. It failed, but that's, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. But
I think that's great.
But yes, had I not gone out, touched grass, literally go for a walk and just get away from whatever it is that, either stressing you out or bringing you joy. But you just, if you experience nature a little bit and just decompress from everything else and put your mind onto something else and not just be obsessive about that one particular whatever that is, you grow as a human being, as an artist, as a horror host, and as a fanboy, and all these other things. So That's my 2 cents.
There you go. You know, anything for a tetanus shot.
Anything for a tetanus shot.
It's
And
just
you
pop.
have, and you know, you have an even better perspective being in Australia, because when you go out in nature, everything's trying to kill you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, you know, you get that adrenaline rush on a different level. Oh my God. I've been wanting to ask you about this for like 3 years. Okay. On YouTube, there is this guy, and he's in Australia, and he never speaks, and he just like wears shorts and nothing else. And he like builds all these primitive, like houses, and he'll use primitive tools and like makes everything by hand, like, you know, pre-Iron Age kind of thing. And he's like, it's amazing. I don't know if you know who this guy is, but
I think there's like, does he have a huge beard?
No, he's clean shaven. I'll have to find the link and send it to you. But
there's a guy that does like how to grow things, and he looks like a caveman. He's got a huge beard and everything.
Yeah. I mean, but, this guy looks like, you know, he could go do porn and then, but you know, but build you a shelter while he's doing it. So
that's handy.
He'll make you comfortable, you know. But it's crazy. Fun. It is fun.
This is fun.
Thank you so much for your patience with all of this nonsense. I know that cyclones and the internet and tech, it's just all, it can be.
It's fun. It's fun. Did you want to do a proper close, or you just ended on the?
I haven't really come up with a proper closing yet. I think what I did with Penny Druppel, I was like, well, that's it. Thanks for coming.